A freight crew is trapped inside a locomotive, flames pressing against every window, radioing 5 words nobody wants to hear. "We're encased in flames now." They got out. The fire that cornered them did not stop. It's called Thunder Bay 36. It's burning across more than 318,000 hectares of northwestern Ontario, nearly twice the area of Toronto, and it is still not under control. 11 First Nations have been evacuated. Military planes are flying families out. Smoke has reached more than 100 million Americans. And the number of fires on Ontario's map just dropped for the worst possible reason. Here's where things stand right now. As of Tuesday night's update from Ontario's Aviation, Forest Fire and Emergency Services, 146 wildfires are burning across northwestern Ontario alone. 53 are not under control. That count climbed overnight. It was 139 just a day earlier. Zoom out, and the national picture is heavier still. Roughly 889 fires are burning across Canada, with about 3 million hectares burned this year, putting 2026 on track to be the 3rd largest wildfire season in Canadian history. It's Wednesday, July 22, and the biggest change in the last 24 hours isn't a statistic. It's another community ordered out, with the roads behind it closing. We'll get there. First, understand how abnormal this is. Ontario may be heading toward its biggest fire season on record, more than 7,250 square kilometers of forest burned, most of it in just the last 10 days. Thunder Bay 36, on its own, has burned a third more land than all of Ontario's fires combined burned last year. The province's 10-year seasonal average is about 210,000 hectares. One fire has already blown past it. That's why more than 155 fire crews and over 80 aircraft were committed by the weekend, and why officials keep talking about sending resources, where suppression can actually succeed not everywhere it's needed. So what is this fire? Thunder Bay 36 started on July 12 in the Wabakimi Provincial Park area, remote wilderness north of Thunder Bay. 10 days ago, it was one incident among dozens. Then it swallowed 3 neighboring fires, including a large one previously listed as Dryden 13, and became a single merged complex that Ontario forest fires measured at 350,922 hectares. Days later, the province remapped it at just under 319,000 hectares. That's not the fire shrinking. That's better aerial mapping, replacing early estimates. Whatever the exact line on the map, the reality hasn't changed. It remains out of control, and it has already affected the areas around Armstrong, Namaigusasagugun, also known as Collins First Nation and White Sand First Nation. Fire ranger crews, helicopters, and heavy equipment are assigned to it. What nobody has offered is a containment timeline. Understanding why means understanding how this thing grew so fast. The chain is brutal in its simplicity. Mid-July brought severe heat to northern Ontario, with warnings of humidex values near 40. Weeks of warm, dry weather primed the forest as fuel. Then, lightning storms moved through, igniting new fires faster than crews could reach them. Around one community alone, lightning pushed the number of surrounding fires to 6. Here's the part most people miss. This region has almost no roads. Communities are connected by air, by rail, or by a single highway. When a fire starts in roadless wilderness, ground crews often can't reach it at all, which means aircraft carry the response, and when smoke thickens, even aircraft are limited. So separate fires burn toward each other, merge, and multiply their perimeter. Every factor feeds the next. That's how a single ignition on July 12 became a complex nearly twice the size of Toronto in under 2 weeks. And Thunder Bay 36 isn't the only giant. To the southwest, near Atikokan, 3 fires, Fort Frances 14, 15, and 38, have burned a combined 94,000 hectares. Officials call it the Atikokan cluster. Fort Frances 14 alone was mapped at more than 55,000 hectares by mid-July, and an evacuation order is tied to it. This cluster matters for a different reason than size. It sits near the Lac des Mille Lacs and Uppsala areas west of Thunder Bay, closer to highways, closer to lodges, closer to people. Crews have reported good progress there in recent days. Progress is not containment, and while they work, the map keeps moving. Early Tuesday morning, Kiashke Zaging Anishinabek Gull Bay First Nation came under a mandatory evacuation order after lightning raised the number of wildfires surrounding the community to 6. At almost the same time, the closure of Highway 527 was extended to the Highway 811 junction, and Highway 811 itself was closed to everything except local traffic getting out. Think about that sequence. A community ordered to leave while its road access was shutting down around it. This is what expansion actually means here. The fires are no longer only a wilderness problem inside a provincial park. They are pressing into the corridor of communities strung along the highways and the rail line north of Thunder Bay. Now, the answer to the question from the start of this video. The number of listed fires in the Northwest dropped at one point last week because several fires merged into Thunder Bay 36. Fewer names on the map, more fire on the ground. If you only watched the incident count, you'd think things were improving while the opposite was true. And there's a second reversal inside this story. Rain finally arrived. Officials confirmed that recent precipitation reduced fire behavior and let crews make real progress on the fire line. That's genuinely good news. But in the same 24 hours, the active count in the region still rose from 139 to 146, and the biggest fire remains out of control, relief and escalation at the same time. Behind every one of these numbers are people a long way from home. As of Monday, roughly 2,415 evacuees were staying in host communities across Ontario Thunder Bay, Kenora, Fort Francis, Sioux Lookout, Red Lake, and as far south as Barrie, Niagara Falls, and Toronto. Premier Doug Ford cited about 1,800 evacuees a day earlier. Counts differ depending on when and what gets tallied. 11 First Nations are among the communities evacuated. In Eabamatung First Nation, Fort Hope, about 360 kilometers north of Thunder Bay, around 600 of roughly 1,600 residents were flown out by the Canadian Armed Forces using 4 Hercules aircraft to be housed in Niagara Falls, more than 1,500 kilometers from home. In Collins, a lodge operator reported tourist lodges and residences destroyed. No fatalities have been reported as of the latest update. And the anger is now public. On Tuesday, First Nations chiefs, including Gull Bay's Wilfred King, demanded a public inquiry and resignations at Ontario's Ministry of Natural Resources, saying communities were forced to flee without provincial help. The province has defended its response. That dispute is not resolved. If you're anywhere near the affected areas, one distinction matters most. An evacuation order means leave now. An alert means be ready to go on short notice documents, medication, chargers, pets, essentials packed. Orders currently cover Armstrong, White Sand, Collins, Gakijiwanong Anishinaabe Nation, Lac LaCroix, Lac des Mille Lacs, and Gull Bay First Nations, with alerts across parts of the Dryden, Fort Francis, and Atikokan district. But leaving is the hard part. Highways 527 and 811 are closed. Highway 599 is closed between Highway 516 and Pickle Lake. For some communities, those are the only practical routes. A closure isn't an inconvenience, it's isolation. The railway is cut too. CN suspended operations near Armstrong, and Via Rail's Canadian, the passenger train that crosses the entire country, has been suspended through the region. A restricted fire zone covers much of the Northwest, and municipalities, including Thunder Bay, have banned open burning. Which brings us back to that train. It was the night of July 13, about 32 kilometers from Armstrong. Fire had reached the rail corridor, and 3 CN freight trains were brought to a halt, trains carrying combustible and flammable goods. Inside one locomotive, the crew filmed what was happening. Orange light through every window, trees burning on both sides of the track, visibility collapsing, a crew member pleading over the radio for the train to move. The footage was shared publicly by provincial MPP Sol Mamakwa, and CN confirmed it was authentic. The crew was evacuated safely, and CN said no one was injured. The union tells a different version. Teamsters Canada said the crew was treated for smoke inhalation, and its president, Paul Boucher, said CN should never have sent a train down those lines. Transport Canada is now conducting follow-up oversight into whether CN complied with the Railway Safety Act. Those accounts don't fully agree, and the review hasn't concluded. What's beyond dispute is this. A freight train ended up inside an active fire zone, and the crew's escape is the only reason this story isn't far worse. The flames stayed in the north. The smoke didn't. Plumes from these fires pushed southeast, hazing skies over Toronto, then Chicago, Boston, and New York. At the peak on July 16 and 17, air quality alerts covered at least 18 U.S. states and more than 100 million people. Milwaukee recorded the worst air quality in its history on July 16, an index reading of 644, more than double the city's previous record. By Monday, conditions had improved across much of Ontario, but air remained unhealthy in parts of the U.S. Midwest. If you're hundreds of kilometers from any flame and the sky still smells like a campfire, this is why. A fire this size doesn't need to reach your city to change it. So where is this heading? The honest answer? Better right now, uncertain after that. The rain was real. Fire danger ratings are currently low across most of the Northwest, except a pocket of high hazard around Sioux Lookout, where a fire near Cat Lake grew significantly last week. But Environment and Climate Change Canada's outlook points to above-average temperatures through July and August, with dry conditions expected for Manitoba and northwestern Ontario. The forecast shows the relief may not hold, may not will. Meanwhile, the response is enormous and still constrained. Incident management teams have taken over Thunder Bay 36 and the Atikokan cluster. Hundreds of air purifiers, filters, and scrubbers have been shipped to smoke-affected communities, and food is moving to evacuees through Feed Ontario and Indigenous Friendship Centres. Ford promised the province will not spare a penny fighting these fires. But no official has put a date on containing the biggest fire, and the chief's demand for an inquiry now hangs over the entire response. Improvement? Yes. Resolution? No. And the season isn't pausing to let anyone catch up. The regional count rose again overnight to 146, with evacuation orders or alerts tied to Thunder Bay 36, 54 and 56, Dryden 34 and 35, and Fort Frances 14. Most new fires are small, and being observed, not every ignition is a disaster, but everyone competes for the same crews and aircraft. Meanwhile, thousands of people are living out of arenas and hotel rooms, some more than 1,500 kilometers from home, waiting for word. Animal rescue groups are fostering displaced pets. Communities are organizing their own support networks. Here's the picture as of the latest updates. Thunder Bay 36 at more than 318,000 hectares and out of control. 146 active fires in the Northwest. Roughly 2,415 people evacuated. Highways 527, 811, and part of 599 closed. Smoke still degrading air in the U.S. Midwest. Rain helping, heat looming. If you're in the region, base your decisions on Ontario's official forest fire map, Ontario 511, and your community's alerts, not on social media clips. If you want the next verified update on this situation, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if an evacuation alert reaches your community, don't wait for the order. Have your essentials ready and be prepared to move.